Are you recording?
I am.
All right, cool.
So say stuff and junk.
Stuff and junk and junk and stuff. Junk and stuff and stuff and junk. Looking at the stuff and looking at the junk.
Looking at the stuff and junk. Right.
With stuff and junk.
We are recording. We are live.
Cool.
Ready for 10 seconds for Harambe?
Do it.
Somewhere, behind granite battlements, beyond impenetrable gates, indoors, something evil is brewing, and it isn't Elsinore beer. Here, an unsuspecting heiress has become the innocent pawn of a diabolical genius. At his command, space-age super lasers that can incinerate an entire metropolis. An army of deadly hockey warriors. At his fingertips, lots of beer.
Just one more test.
Quite good. Attack warning. Is it for real? Attack warning is for bloody real.
Live from Colorado Springs, the Drop Culture Podcast.
Want to confirm, is this an exercise? Roger, copy. This is not an exercise.
Come on, quick, get down. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome, everybody, to the Drop Culture Podcast. We're that podcast where we pick up that piece of pop culture that you forgot about or missed, shine it up real nice, and cram it in your ear holes. Tonight, what are we talking about, Brock?
We are 100% talking about one of my favorite movies, comedy movies of all time, Strange Brew.
It's a good one.
Fucking love this movie, man. I shouldn't use the F word so much, but this movie is something that I've had in my life for God ever.
Yeah, honestly. I remember it for a long time as well.
When did you first see it?
I had to have been young, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I remember that in SCTV and all that at the same time.
See, I never got to see SCTV because anywhere that I was at, I don't think that they didn't air it anywhere. Because I know it was on NBC at one point.
I watched it when it was like the reruns, of course, you know, but it was like really late night, on like a Friday night, I think it was, that it was on, instead of on Saturday night, you know, like when Saturday Night Live was on.
Yeah. Well, it started in what, 76?
Yeah.
Went to like 84 or something like that.
Long time, yeah.
It was pretty crazy because you got to think of who was on that, right?
Sure.
You had like Eugene Levy, which he's still making. He had that big show, Schitt's Creek. Catherine O'Hara, which she's phenomenal. Been on so many different things. God, anybody that was famous and Canadian or Canadian and funny was on that because they were all Second City, you know?
Absolutely.
And that was kind of like the Canadians they were like the birth mothers of comedy. I mean, it was some of the funniest people in the world.
100%. And I don't know if being Canadian gives them any sort of edge, but
no,
I mean, it's a different kind of comedy too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like I remember watching one that was John Candy and he was a food, what was it? He fixed food.
Okay.
So people would bring him, broken food. Like one person brought him a bag of pretzels that didn't have salt on them. And he was like, whoa. This is going to cost you a lot of money because I got to go into each one of these and I got to put all the salt on individual ones. It was just ridiculous.
Right.
You know, it was pretty funny.
No, absolutely.
where Bob and Doug McKenzie come from is they, of course, Rick Moranis came along the third season, right? Him and Dave Thomas both came along about the same time, I think.
Yeah, Dave Thomas not the guy that makes hamburgers with the redheaded girl.
Yeah. No, yeah, Dave Thomas has been in some pretty cool movies. But,
absolutely. I was just, for the listener, letting him know it wasn't the Wendy's guy.
Oh, yeah. But, oh my God. What other movies? I think he was on Love at Stake. Man. But anyway, back on the show. Well, doing my research, I found out, because I know that Bob and Doug McKenzie started on there, right?
On
so
SCTV?
Whenever they started on there, they needed basically 2 minutes on certain channels, and especially the Canadian ones, because they were on the Canadian National Television channel, right?
Yeah.
And with the Canadian National Television or Canadian the government-run television like BBC or something like that, they had to have a certain amount of time had to be allotted for Canadian, something, right? I forgot how they kind of put it. It's got to be Canadian cultural something like that, right?
Yeah, it's got to be something. Yeah.
Huh?
Didn't they do a skit on that on the Kids in the Hall?
I don't know. They might have.
This is where your taxpayer dollars are going to.
Yeah, the show. The show was filmed in Canada. It was directed in Canada. It was shown in Canada.
Right.
How other Canadian can you be, right?
Right.
So,
well, you could. What you could do is you could play stereotypes of Canadians in your show. Oh, they did that too.
Well, that's what they did because they had those 2 minutes they had to fill. So basically, what they would do is there would be one person filming, and they would just sit there and ad lib for 2 minutes. Sometimes longer, but they had to fill that up. So they would always kind of just come out and they would have their little bitty Coleman. I even remember seeing that, be like, oh yeah, we got the Coleman all full of ice. They had their back bacon cooking, just everything. But they said that the type of people that they were kind of imitating were more of the way that they put it was like backwoods almost, but it really wasn't. They were like Northern Canadians.
Sure.
So a lot of Northern Canadians, they spoke that way. They were kind of animated that way. They were all just fun-loving people, kind of like our rednecks.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, so it was a very stereotypical deal, but everybody had, their costumes so they could be Bob and Doug. You know what I mean? So they had their tuques, right, which was their hats. They had, the big jacket. They had the flannel shirts, the jeans, and the boots. So anybody technically could be Bob and Doug McKenzie, which was pretty awesome. You know what I mean? So it took off. Bob and Doug took off. They even had a parade for them, caused a lot of resentment on SCTV because they were getting so much attention for something that was just supposed to be a throwaway.
Right.
And,
that's how it works in the world, though. You know what I mean? It just takes for something. That's essentially the going viral of the 80s,
Right. And what was so nuts about it is it became such a phenomenon in a weird way. Everybody was imitating them, dressing like them, doing everything, right? They came out with an album. Now, I never really heard the album, until a couple of years ago when I bought it on vinyl.
Okay.
Because they sold over 1 million copies. It was like a huge deal in Canada. And Dave Thomas and Rick Moranis were always on camera joking about the success. They're like, we thought there was a fire at the place, so we almost was telling the driver to drive past, So it was becoming this really big phenomenon. And guess what? Of course, Hollywood of the North or whatnot, MGM came calling and said, hey, we're going to option this for a movie. Bam. There you go. So,
and you're going to do it.
Right. Why the hell not?
Why would you not make Wayne's World?
Those characters. Yeah. And the characters were so funny just on the show because it was all ad-libbed. Now you add in a story to it, and then you got this huge production, which it really wasn't that big.
No.
You know, I think, what was it was
I know it made
$4
money.
million budget.
Yeah, I think they made 6.5.
8.5.
8.5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was co-directed by Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas, and this was Rick Moranis' first time to direct a movie, and I believe Dave Thomas too, to direct this movie or direct any kind of movie, and it was written by them as well.
Yes. Yes.
So you literally have them as the writers, the directors, the actors, and it was based on a skit that they did too. You know, so
Sure.
yeah, it's one of the ultimate.
So they got
of,
paid, is what you're saying?
Huh?
They must have got paid pretty well for doing all the things.
Oh, yeah. If they got paid, I don't know what they got paid in Molson or.
They had to spend
like
that $4 million somewhere, dude.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I don't know where it's at a lot in this movie. The castle background.
Well, that's not even where they were at because that was
I know.
all matte painting.
I know. That's what I was saying.
Well, somewhere I heard that the matte painting guy was like related to somebody else who was really famous too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was another like there was just people really wanted to work on this movie too because they loved the characters and it was more of a labor of love, and it just kind of
it'd just be fun.
Yeah, no, and of course, yeah. Like, how are you going to write a story about these two Canadian dudes that love beer? What is going to be the angle of the story, right? How are they going to get this? And how are they going to throw some gags that people already know from their record and everything, you know?
Right.
How are they going to kind of tie everything together? Well, they loosely based the script on Hamlet.
Okay. I'll buy that.
Which you can see because the uncle took over, right?
Yep.
You know, the daughter was supposed to. So the real story was based on Hamlet. You got Brewmeister Smith, which he was one of the major characters in Hamlet, but it's not his real name. But
right.
You know, they basically, if you look at the way Hamlet went and the way that this one went, that's what you got.
Sure,
you know?
with beer.
Even the castle. God, Elsinore Castle. I think Elsinore was something in Hamlet too. There's so many weird little throwbacks into it and stuff into it. I do know that the insane asylum that they used for the backdrop and then for whenever they were at it was the same water treatment plant that, guess what?
What's that?
That's where one of the Apocalypse trilogy movies was filmed too.
Really?
Yeah. You know when Sam Neill is coming out?
Yeah.
From In the Mouth of Madness?
Yes.
At the very beginning? That's the same one.
Really?
That's crazy, huh?
That's crazy.
Just to kind of see, you know, I mean, and then they had, even Elsinore Castle was some other famous building, and then the brewery was something else and not a brewery. But when you look at it in the 4K version, and you get to see all the nice everything does look dated. But at the same time, what's really cool about it is those backdrops were awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it for such a small kind of insular looking film, they had this broad scope.
True.
Which was pretty bitchin', you know.
Not as bitchin' as their van.
Huh?
Not as bitchin' as their van.
No, shit no. Which, you know, you get to see what they drive, you get to see how they act, but in the one thing that a lot of people pointed out too in all my research was how they really acted like brothers. You know,
sure.
How they would push each other around, and there's so many little bitty things in this movie. Like at one part, you can see Doug push Bob up in Rick Moranis into like the side of a wall somewhere when he's following Angus McInnes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He like just pushes him, and he's always like kicking him and doing stupid shit, you know, because he's the older brother. Yeah. There's so many fucking hilarious things in this movie, you know, and I don't think it is ever going to get old for me. Like, I'm never going to watch it and be like, this sucks.
Yeah. I enjoyed watching it again. It'd been a long, long time since I'd seen it.
Oh man, I think I watch it once or twice a year.
Oh,
you know? It's just one of those very funny movies. And they even make fun of themselves quite a bit throughout the movie. One spot that I never really noticed up until like the last couple weeks is whenever they're it's at the very end and they're kind of running from the insane asylum to the brewery, and Angus McInnes, Rosie LaRose is like, hey, there's an underground tunnel that runs to the brewery, and Dave Thomas is like, huh, that's awful convenient.
Yeah.
And he's, while they're running, I mean, it's after they do the whole shock therapy thing and everything. It's just funny. There's just a lot of just those really little bitty funny things, the small things that are good.
Absolutely. It's definitely one of those kind of comedy movies, which I enjoy.
Oh, yeah.
And here's the connective tissue to the last movie we did. We get Max von Sydow again.
Yes. And he was wearing falsies in this movie, too.
Really?
Fake teeth. And you can tell that affected the way he performed his lines and everything like that, too.
Oh, okay.
Because his inflection in his voice and the way he was trying to keep those teeth in.
I see.
Yeah, you could tell that he's kind of like half open in his mouth,
I'll buy that.
And you see those big ass teeth, whenever he's smiling and whenever he's talking to Pamela, and just every part of it. And it's weird to think that somebody that, Mr. Ingmar Bergman, big time movie dude, was in a little bitty comedy movie from Canada is weird. But he only did the movie because his son really liked SCTV and encouraged him to do it. So he did it.
Really?
Yeah. So
that's pretty awesome.
It's pretty cool because, I mean, you have this well-established freaking actor. The guy played Jesus Christ.
Yeah. The greatest story ever or whatever.
And he's been in a Star Wars movie. I mean, he's been everywhere. The Exorcist, for Christ's sake. The dude is like multifaceted and everything. And in this, he's playing that super serious, I could crush your head like a peanut.
Yeah, he's
what does he say? I could crush your head like a nut.
He's definitely the bad guy, Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's very tall and skinny, He's got that accent.
Well, in the last movie, he wasn't necessarily the bad guy. He was just,
Yeah.
sort of the bad guy. Sort of assisted the bad guy in a way.
Right. Well, besides, Dave Thomas, Rick Moranis, Max von Sydow, Lynn Griffin, she was Pam Elsinore. I'm really not sure a lot of the stuff that she did. But one thing that I always kind of prided myself on knowing, but Angus McInnes, he was Jean Rosie LaRose.
Yeah.
He was gold leader on Star Wars, the original.
Really?
Yeah, gold leader checking in. Starting our attack run. Keep it tight. You know what I mean? Like, that's him.
That's crazy.
It's so, and I always thought that was the ultimate like Star Wars trivia. If somebody knew that, I'd be like, yes. You know what I mean? You have Paul Dooley as Uncle Claude.
Yes.
Which he is. God, in this movie, he's so creepy and funny and stupid and everything. It's just, it's funny. Mel Blanc, supposedly, Mel Blanc, was supposed to get paid $10,000 an hour or something like that.
Jesus.
And and the director, or the producer was like, fuck you, we're not going to do that. So, Dave Thomas and Rick Moranis, I think, convinced him that they were going to have him for the day. But, he had to get picked up in a limo and all this other stuff. So they were like, hey, we're going to get a deal. So they picked him up, took him to the studio. He was done within an hour. And because the producer was like, oh, shit, now we're getting a full day, right? Well, they didn't tell. They encouraged him to still do it, even though they lied to the producer.
Right.
So he did work for $10,000 for that 1 hour.
That's
he recorded everything that fast, Well, the first time I watched it, that was one of the things that I was like, oh, my God, that's so funny. That's him, And, the guy that played Ted, he has a pretty big role. I don't even know how you say his name, Brian McKenzie or something like that. God, I think he was on National Lampoon.
Okay.
He was a book. He was on the magazine. He was a writer there. So that's probably how he got in there,
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is an MGM movie too. And you think back in 1983, MGM was just like going for it. They had this and they had, wasn't the last movie we did, wasn't that MGM? No, because it was Dreamscape. It was something else.
Yeah, I don't remember, nor do I have access to any device that could possibly tell me.
Well, okay. So now that we've gone through that, we've seen, because this was not as big in the U.S., I guess. The first time I got to really see it was I was young, and one of my really good friends, his dad had a videotape, one of those 8-hour long ones or 6-hour long ones or some shit like that, right?
Right.
And on his days off, he would watch The Blues Brothers, Wayne's World, and Strange Brew.
Nice.
And they were in constant rotation. Every time I would go over to their house and he was off work, those videos were on, and it was all on one tape. So it's pretty cool. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I kind of got to love that movie, really, after the first time I saw it, because it was really funny. Not a lot of people still knew about it, but it was just hilarious. The steamroller part, just everything was kind of like big back in the day in my neighborhood for him, because of that dad, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Which was pretty rad. But, yeah, they made a cartoon of this. I think they were trying to get one off the ground.
Oh, really?
The Adventures of Bob and Doug, which I don't think Moranis was involved in it. I think it was just Dave Thomas. They actually kind of reprised the role on that movie Brother Bear, where they were the mooses.
Yeah,
where the moose,
exactly.
The
mooses?
Which that's not, yeah, the moose. The meese.
The moose in the woods is to eat is an in.
It's the meeses to pieces. But I remember seeing that and being like, oh my God. And I think they came back for something else. And, Rick Moranis famously, quit the business after his wife died to take care of his kids.
Right.
But, Rick Moranis was, you got to say, had a really huge career after this. Dave Thomas, not so much.
Yeah.
But still, Dave Thomas was in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but you're right. Rick Moranis, obviously, the Ghostbusters guy, I think, was a big vehicle for him. Inner Space, of course. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Coneheads.
Yeah.
Stripes. That movie Rat Race, which was pretty good.
Yeah.
He was in a movie called Moving, and I think that was a Richard Pryor movie. Yep. Mm-hmm. And
I remember that.
Yeah. Love at Stake was one of those movies that I remember because I had it on video, and he was in it. And that's kind of like one of those connective tissues for me when the first time I saw Love at Stake first, which came out in 1987, before I saw this one, Sure. So it was just one of those things. I was like, I know that guy. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But he was pretty, he's still pretty, I don't know, prolific. And, Rick Moranis is still in semi-retirement or retirement. He's only done he came out of retirement, which is a crazy thing, right? And did that commercial for Mint Mobile, right?
Yeah.
For
Ryan Reynolds, yeah.
And then 2 or 3 weeks after he did that commercial, somebody drive-by punched him.
Yeah, I remember that.
New York. That's messed up, man. He comes out of retirement for just a second, and some dude runs up and belts him, knocks him down.
That's crazy.
What the hell?
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's just it's weird. But
came out of retirement. I think it's because they're both Canadian.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
He's like, hey.
He came out for that. And he probably paid him like a freaking $1 million to do it.
Probably more.
Rick Moranis has got Rick Moranis money. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, not only that, I mean, it's not bad when you're pimping a $15 network. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's not like you're hurting anybody.
No, come on. And he probably didn't even have to leave home.
Right.
They're like, guess what? We'll do it from your house.
Right.
Like, all right. From my garage. But let's get into this story. Very simple. Now, most of the comedy movies that we do, it's very hard to do the linear style like we usually do with anything else. But I mean, we can kind of hit on some major points, I think, and just some of the really funny gags in it. Because again, the story for it is completely absurd. Right. It really isn't all about them trying to get free beer, but that's the catalyst for everything.
Exactly. Exactly. Well,
which is awesome. Because every time I watch this movie, the very first part of it, whenever they're in the theater and they're showing their movie, right?
Right.
The Mutants of 2051 AD. Yeah. It is so funny. That is like, I laugh my ass off the whole time because it's so cheap and stupid and everything, right? Like,
absolutely. It reminds me of That's Pretty Neat. You know what I mean? Like that level of acting and cheesiness.
10 years after World War III. And they're even fighting on it.
Right.
And it's a piece of cardboard.
It's World War IV, wasn't it?
I was off planet finding a new city for my children. And he's like, psst, act, psst, act. And he puts his hand in his head, he kind of acted like he's crying Statue of Liberty. It's like, there was nothing to do. All the bowling alleys were closed, and I was looking for beer. It was just fuck. God. And then on my way through the Forbidden Zone, I spotted a fleshy-headed mutant and decided to check it out.
Are you good or bad?
I am an enemy of society. And if you notice, what I find is the funniest part. Of course, he's wearing hockey gear.
Right. Well, he's Canadian. Yeah.
And then Home Dude's got like foam balls in his head. His brother does, and he's got pantyhose on his head and everything like that. So it's just really crappy. And he pulls out his tape measure. Alpha Base. This is Bob McKenzie. It's so, it's just so bad and funny, and he's shooting him. And they even make that remark. They did this on their album, because they got to introduce you in the same way that they did on the TV show with Great White North background. They're like, hey, this is our movie, and they're in this huge freaking theater. So how did these dudes,
Right.
So it's a really cool transition that they did that way, because they're like, okay, these guys are on the TV. Let's put them on the big screen, but then show them in real life.
Right.
So it's like you're there. You're like, oh, okay, now I get it. So they're not famous, but yet they had a movie that played in one of the biggest movie houses in Canada. That was like the University Theater or something crazy like that, right?
Nice.
Huge theater. And you're thinking, oh, damn, how did they get a premiere for this crappy movie like this, right? But yet the whole gag is the movie keeps going while we're not in the theater, and that's what you get to watch.
I love that the tape breaks, and he's like, no, just look at this, and he's like pulling out the negatives, the film.
He's like, here, zoom in on this. Zoom in right here. We just look at this. And he makes that joke. I'm getting whiplash from my burps. They have all that popcorn, and oh my God, it's so funny. And that one guy's like, hey, they did this on their album. And that one old lady comes up and she's like, I hope you're proud of yourselves.
Yeah, so they bounce. They're like, we're out of here. And then, of course, the whole group of people's coming after them.
Well, yeah, because they put the moths out, and you can hear this one dude in the background. Yeah. Oh, my sweater!
Well, I love that even that was pretty meta because he tells them that in the movie, you know?
Yeah. When you get to a part that you just let them go and they'll fly up to the projection booth, and you can get your money back. But so they end up outside, right? They go, they start to run to the front. He's like, no, they'll tear us apart out there. So they run out to the back, and there's those kids crying and that dad. They saved their allowance for 2 weeks for this.
What am I supposed to tell them? So he gives them their money. Rick Moranis gives them their $15 that he has, which apparently was supposed to go to buy some beer for his dad.
Yeah, it's dad's beer money. Yeah. You know, he's supposed to buy him some more Elsinore beer. Well, it's pretty funny too. Whenever they're running away from the people, right? So they ditch the people, and they're like, "Watch out, There's cops all around." And he runs right into him. He's like, "Ooh, good thing I'm still wearing that jacket." Just the little things like that.
I know, like when they're jumping in the van, and he's like, "Am I driving or are you driving?" He's like, "Oh, you drive. There's a lot of cops around. Thanks."
You're too good to drive. And then the cop's like, "No, gotta go this way." He's like, "My brother's drunk, eh?" He's like, "Take off." "I'm not drunk." And they take off. And I like they do the kind of the cruising deal, almost kind of like Wayne's World, you know?
Yeah.
While they're kind of just having fun in the van. And if you notice in the fleshy headed mutant scene, when you're looking at the wheel cover in the back, it has a Canadian symbol, but it says beauty underneath it.
Nice. It's beauty.
So yeah, when they get home, that's funny too, because all you hear is the cartoons, right? And then Mel Blanc's voice comes on, and you know it's him, but you don't see their faces, right? Which is really freaking funny, you know, because you just get to hear that. And they immediately come in, they grab some donuts, and they pop 3 beers, right? They take one and they give one to Hosehead. And Hosehead is their skunk-looking dog, which is funny. You know, I don't know why. It's just, it's so dumb. And so, you know, it comes time he's like, "Hey, save one of those beers for me, eh?" And they look down, and they both chug their beers really fast.
And then pour the beer that they gave the dog back into a glass. It's so gross.
It's so disgusting. And he's like, "Let go of it. I'm going to let go of it. You let go. I'm going to let go of it."
And then they let go of it. And it breaks.
"Doug broke your beer." He's like, "No, I didn't."
And then this is what sets them off on their quest, is to get beer. And they say they're going to need some money. And the dad's like, "Use the money I gave you yesterday, jackass." And so then I think it's Dave Thomas's character that comes up with the plan, right?
Yeah, it's the next day. So they're off to the beer store. Now, funny little story about this whole part right here. Okay, so all of the beer companies wanted them to be in, you know, a part of their operation. They thought it was going to be great to do this, everything like that, right?
Sure.
So there's in real life, there was a store called the Brewers Retail, right?
Okay.
And it looked exactly the same as the beer store in this one, but they only sold beer. You went to the liquor store to get liquor, and you go to one of these places to get beer.
Okay.
So when, like, say, Molson and all the people knew that they were going to use the mouse in the bottle thing, they were like, "Fuck that, we're out."
Really?
You know? So, yeah, all the real beer places were like, "Nope, not going to do it." So they had to make up the beer store, which in turn, nowadays, if you go to Canada, the Brewers Retail have turned into the beer store.
Really?
Yes. And which is so weird, it's pretty funny that they ended up doing it, because they didn't even want to be part of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, they go in, and that's pretty funny too, because I mean, they're like 12 Elsinore, 24 Elsinore. Oh yeah, 24 Elsinore beers, please. 24 Elsinore, and they just they have like a conveyor belt system. That, you know, the roller.
Yeah,
deal?
they just shoot them out across the rollers.
but there's so many people in that store.
Right.
I mean, the beer store is full. They got a line.
It's Canada, dude.
Know? Yeah. His
it's
line,
cold.
He's like, actually, a friend of ours, a cop, he found this in a bottle of beer that he bought at your store. And we heard that if you bring this to the store, you'll get free beer. And he's like, yeah, there's legal precedent setting cases in the Canadian Criminal Code, eh? And you could tell the way he delivered that line is like it was scripted for him. Like he had to remember what to say.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he was trying to remember, and he's like, yeah. And they're like, no, why don't you go to the brewery? And that one dude just laughs at him.
The old man behind him?
Yeah. He just busts up laughing at him like, you dumbasses. So they do go to the brewery. When they pull up, you get to see that huge map painting. And, so it's supposed to basically be outlining the brewery, the castle, and then you got the insane asylum.
Which makes sense. They got
a little sign up and everything.
Because we find out later they're all connected by tunnels.
Yeah. We have the Royal Canadian Institute for the Mentally Insane, right? Yes. And when they pull up, I'm going to take you to the insane asylum. He's like, no, take me to the brewery. Which is so funny, it's another one of those kind of brother things that they did. Well, when they pull up, of course, Pamela Elsinore, she's in a little bitty Volkswagen Rabbit or some shit like that, right?
Stuck in the gate.
So, yeah, stuck in the electric gate, which, god dang, that thing looks dangerous.
Like sparks flying all over the place.
Yeah. So it's weird. So obviously they stumbled on Brewmeister Smith and Uncle Claude trying to kill her right then, right? Which they don't really go into that at all.
No, but they lead you to believe. Leave it to you to infer, I should say.
Yeah. Which is pretty funny too, because they get out and he's like, oh geez, don't get out of your car. The tires are insulators. And he's like, my brother's a genius. He hooked up our stereo. What the fuck? And he's like, you're driving. I don't want her to sue for whiplash. And if she does, then I'll say I was just a hitchhiker. And he gets in the car and they end up, I don't know why they had to back up so far.
They wanted to give it a good Raymond start so they could get through too.
I guess. They just had to push on it. You know what I mean? But I would think that, wouldn't you think the electricity would have shorted out the vehicles?
I think if the electricity was doing that, it would have shorted out the fence. And it wouldn't have mattered. You know what I mean? That van wouldn't have made it through unless it just took the fence down.
Right.
That's what I think.
So this is where we get the introduction of Brewmeister Smith.
And I'm a wizard. I hooked up my computer, even though it was color-coded. And I said I'm a wizard because I hooked up my computer. Yes. So even though it was color-coded.
Well, we get to see Brewmeister Smith talking to, of course, Uncle Claude, and he's talking to his buddy, oh God, what is his name? Brian McConaughey, or Ted, the other guy.
Oh, yeah.
They're in this weird laboratory type of a place, right? So obviously they were all in there watching it happen because they have all this CCTV shit, right?
Right.
So they're looking at him and they're like, and of course Claude's like, they brought some, or Ted thinks that they got some lawyers, and he's like, I did not say that. Because he's so the uncle is so stupid.
Yes,
and he just plays it very well. Because Brewmeister Smith's in the pisser right behind the big globe. He's in the thing.
I like that they buy his name from the secretary with donuts.
Oh my God,
that was pretty smooth. Donut. It's a jelly.
He's all well. He's like, we have a what is it? A meeting with that guy. Eh? It's like, oh, you have? Well, he's dead. Okay. And she's like, well, how long ago was it? And he's like, when did he die? He's like,
and then Rick Moranis' character was like, yeah.
It was we actually had the original appointment with that guy, but the new guy that took over, he's the one we have the appointment with now. What's his name again? the way he delivers the line too, and then they pull out the donuts because he's like, "Would one of these change your mind?"
And it does.
Yes,
because
like,
they're in Canada. You can buy your way with anything with donuts and beer.
Right? He's like, "It's my last one. It's a jelly." It's gross that they're in their pocket and the jelly donut
right?
didn't explode.
So basically, what happens in all this, the gist of it is really, right, is that they go to get free beer. They end up with jobs through the scam they made up, which they talked about earlier on in the movie too, right? About putting the mouse in there.
The scam was because they meet Rosie LaRose in the hall,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time, Pamela is having a meeting with Claude because they talked about the check.
Oh yes,
and he offers her $5 million for her stock.
Just walk away, yeah.
Yeah, and she's like, $5 million is an awful lot of money, And then we get a glimpse of the lawyer that was there.
And Henry?
And, she's like, no, Henry Green ran the brewery when my father was alive. He can help me.
Yeah.
And then Rosie brings him in. He's like, they got a meeting with you, eh? It's like, what meeting? And then they show the mouse in the bottle, and he's like, this shit didn't happen. We had actual men on the bottling lines. So why don't we get some men on the lines? So they put them out there.
So they get,
and I love it.
What I love is that they get a job for a problem that they made up.
Yes.
Being the inspectors to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yes.
That is amazing.
All they have to do is, that's exactly the same kind of a job that it looked like Laverne and Shirley had. At the beginning of Laverne and Shirley.
Yeah, of course. The bottling company, Haas and Pfeffer Incorporated.
And they show the beers going by, the little bitty, the light, and they put their gloves on it. That's exactly where they were at,
Right.
They were looking for imperfection.
Well, they were looking for mice specifically, and what a great job. So they just drank beer all the time.
Well, it was funny because it looks like Bob is counting. He's like 1, 2, 3. He's like mouthing, counting, and then he's like, whoa. He lets one go by 3, 4, 5. And he's because you see Doug grab 2 beers while Henry Green's back was turned.
Mm-hmm.
He sticks them in his pocket and he kind of acts nonchalant about it, right? But then they grab 2 more beers off the line and they pop it open with like a double beer opener or something.
Yeah, didn't he say I swiped this or took this or something?
Yeah, I stole this, eh?
Yeah, there you go.
So they get to go home, and when they show it back home, guess what? They got jobs. They got a van full of cases of beer.
That they just took. Amazing.
God, it's nuts. They had so much crap in there, right? And you can hear, their father going crazy, and he's like, "Ha, yeah!"
He wakes up the neighbors.
Yeah. Quiet down, McKenzie. And then, whenever they show them next, they're actually at the brewery sleeping, right?
Right, because they came too early.
And she's like, "How long have they been here?" "They were here when I got here, or before I got here, Mm-hmm. So they wake up and it's like, "No, Ma, I don't want to get up." But they were afraid they were going to oversleep, so they came to the brewery as early as they could. So they have all those donuts and they go into the cafeteria because there's no people, so the whole place is freaking empty.
Right.
Everything is automated 100%, except for the brewmaster's job and
the mouse inspectors.
Henry Green. And what does fucking Rosie LaRose do?
He seemed like the foreman kind of a guy. I don't know. That's what it just seemed like. Right. Yeah, like the warehouse foreman or something.
Yeah, and they mentioned he had a nervous breakdown. He's like, "No, I got his hockey card at home. I'll show you when we get home." He's like, "Take off, eh? He knows you're lying about the beer." The mouse bottle, and he's going to tell. So, yeah, when they go in there, it's really funny because they're relaying. He's like, "Hey, Pam, you got a credit card? Pam, you got a credit card?" And then he tells him the story, he like once jump started their car with spit and something else.
Yeah.
Because it had acid in it or something. And he opens it up and turns it on, and he makes Rick Moranis makes that joke. Oh man, we could have chocolate milk. But then it starts shooting everything out, right?
Right.
And he grabs the chocolate milk and starts chugging it, and he's like, "Hey, Hoser, this is like 4 months old." One of the best lines is like, "If I didn't have puke breath, I'd kiss you."
Then he covers his mouth.
Yes. Sorry, I threw up all over you. Shouldn't have had that chocolate milk. But then we find out that, you know, her father is still a disembodied spirit that shows up in the electricity.
The ghost in the machine, if you will.
The game gets real hot. It's their birthdays that are their scores, you know, because these intergalactic Canadian Mounties or something like that. It's fucking funny, too. So she goes to look for Brewmeister Smith. I think she has a meeting with him about this time.
Right.
You know, and this is where we pretty much get like one of the very first hockey scenes, too, which is weird because they introduce that, and this stuff like makes him do all these hockey moves, right? And he programmed the computer, Ted did, to that they would react to different sounds, right?
Right, to make them more aggressive and whatnot. Right?
Yeah, white versus black, you know, we could do this, we could do that. But they're in like the frozen room. This is basically like a rink, you know?
Yeah.
And that's whenever they're God, what is it? They show up and they're part of the
they're the goalies somehow.
Yeah, they're goalies, right? I don't think they had goalies in the other part, so they actually become the goalies, right?
Right.
And Angus and Rosie's like, "Hey, I gotta play along, eh?" He's like, "How is your padding?" He's like, "Being on the same side as you, Rosie, is all the padding I need." And you know, and this is another like one of those funny facts too, because Jedi hadn't come out yet,
right?
And of course, they had Revenge of the Jedi was the working title, so I think that they kind of worked that in, and they were like, he saw Jedi 17 times,
right?
Because he does the Darth Vader impression, of course. And then, you know, they start doing the hockey deal, and Rick Moranis is like, "Stick to the ice, don't let anything get through, watch your corners." And then they like, they stop right in front of him. He's like, "Oh." He's like, and then they fucking wreck him. Then they go on the other side, and they knock down Dave Thomas. He's like, "Oh, my left nut." So you know something really sinister's going on. She eventually meets up with what is it? They're at their house, and they're talking about like dead people, and her mom's like, "You know, the Colonel's dead and we're still enjoying his chicken." And she like freaks out, right? Rightfully so. And you know, Claude is just a fucking dildo.
Yes.
Most of the time. His hairdo is gross.
It really goes with his personality.
Yes. So so she finally gets a meeting with Brewmeister Smith, and she's like, "Well, I hope you like your job. You pretty much run the whole brewery." And he's like, "Oh, I'm flattered that you think so." And then that's where you can kind of really see his fake teeth, which is funny. So, you know, she fires him right there. She's like, "You need to get your shit out of here. You know, I'm giving you 2 weeks or some shit."
Right.
And he's like, "Wait a minute, you can't do that to me." And I was like, "Sure as hell I can. I own the company." So he freaks out, you know, and, you know, he kind of takes it out on Claude, and they kind of get into this weird little that they gotta take her down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's when they come up with the plot to have a birthday party for Pam. And of course they're asleep because they get stunned, right?
Right.
While they're at the hockey game, they get stunned and shit. And they steal their clothes. So they're out running around the brewery, and they're like, "Somebody horked our clothes, eh?" And they start just running around, spraying beer on each other and shit, and having a good old time, you know. And they end up in the room and they're fucking around. He gets the weird disc. He's like, "Hey, they're bootlegging." Like, that's not a record. I guess they'd never seen a computer disc before,
Yeah, it's like a 5 1/4.
Yeah.
Which later on he tries to play on a record player.
It's one of those British New Wave bands, eh?
How's that sound? Like a British New Wave band, man.
Yeah, he's like, he's like, "Here, Hosehead, here's another one for your collection."
Come to
I like
find
how
out.
they do it. They do it in reverse. He's like, "Beauty, Hank Aaron, eh? Wonder if you could hit."
Yeah.
But yeah, because they had to stop because they wake up. Claude wakes them up, right?
Right.
And all the mental institutes are going around. Rosie shows up, and come to find out that they had put Pam and the Henry Green guy in those kegs. And freaking Claude Elsinore's like, "Go to the spot at the end of the big hill. You can't miss it. It's at the end of the big hill, all the way down at the end."
Right.
He's like totally emphasizing it because home dude Ted cuts their brakes, and he's like, they got maybe 2, maybe 3 stops.
Right.
So they take off, right?
And
Rosie's
then no
like,
breaks after that.
"Where you guys going, eh?" "Yeah, we're going to Pam's birthday party. You should come with us." And he's like, "No, he's got to go back." So Max von Sydow and him, they get into the big black stretch Lincoln or whatnot.
Right.
And man, they're following him like
right up their
they're
ass. Yeah, like not. Obviously, though, they're oblivious because they're not bright. So it works out.
Well, what's funny too is he slams on the brakes.
Yeah.
He's like, "Hey, what was that for?" He's like, "The brakes felt a little funny." So that was one stop.
Right.
They had to figure out that one stop. But they never stop at any stop sign or anything else like that, right?
Right.
So they actually get to their house, so they stop the second time. They go in there. They do that. They do the record deal. They have a couple of beers and everything. And he's like, "I'm just getting warmed up for the party, eh?" They get in the car and they take off, and of course, no brakes. So they're just running the lights. And before that, he's got that joke. He's like, "Hey, did you ever notice in movies that they never look at the road when they're driving?"
Yeah, and he's like all sitting inside, like, "Really?"
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, "Yeah, they're being pulled by a trailer." And he's like, "Whoa, watch out." And then that's whenever they run the red light.
Right. And then the cops are after him and they have no brakes. What can they do?
He's like, "Use the parking brake. Take off, eh? The parking brake never works." And then he's like, "Well, no sense in steering anymore anyway."
He's like, no, you steer.
He's like, "No, put your hands back on the wheel." They launch that freaking van.
Yeah,
Jesus. And it's convenient that one of the kegs falls out, right? But that's the one that's got Henry Green in it. He gets hit by the police officers. But they freaking fly like
into the
150 yards into Lake Ontario, right? They're out. And then Rosie's waiting there, right? So he sees Pam come out of the water. He jumps in to save her, gives her his last breath, right? And he falls down to the middle, boom, or right into the middle of the top of the vehicle, boom.
Right.
And then they have that comedy intermission.
Yeah. It's like 30 seconds long.
Yeah, it's like dun 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 dun, and then they're back, and they got her coming out of the water. They open the keg, and Henry Green's like, "Help me!" So he's all messed up, and she's like really seriously about to talk, and then Brewmeister Smith tranquilizes her with a scope. That scope on that freaking dart gun. That's like you could shoot a deer from 3 miles away with it.
Right,
so
right.
She gets knocked out. And they're like, nobody could survive that long down there. Nobody. So they send some divers down there, and they end up down there, and they pull up to or they swim by the passenger side window, and he's like, "What?"
He knocks on the window.
Yeah, because they're surviving off the beer bottles in the air. It's like they're drinking the beer bottles. And he knocks on the window and he rolls it down and he shows his driver's license. And then the next scene, of course, they're going to jail, which is pretty funny too. Right. So they put them in that jail cell, and it's nothing but guys that are 3 times as big as they are, right?
But then when they cut back, like he's telling them a story.
Yeah, my brother does the killing. I don't like it.
Right.
that one big dude's like, "You guys want to smoke?"
He's like, "No, I want my lungs pink when they fry us."
Yeah. Yeah, lawyers are for sucks. And then it's like, McKenzie brothers, your lawyer's here.
And they book ass.
It's funny, that big guy that offered them smoke saw, liars. And then the whole joke about the justice system working. He's like, if you're innocent, you have nothing to worry about. The dude's like laughing. And every time they turn their head and look at each other, he stops laughing until they look back at him and laughing some more. And this is whenever they do go over. They're leaving the jail, right, and they're going to court. And that's when he goes all Chuck Norris on everybody. He's like, "Reporters, I'll handle this. Hold this for me." So he like steps up and he kicks the shit out of like 2 or 3 of the reporters, right? And the one woman reporter jumps over the rail and starts kicking the crap out of him too. But then he gets the upper hand and knocks her out, right? And he's like, "Whoa, Chuck Norris for the defense, eh?"
It was like a bad kung fu movie.
Yes, it really was. It's just so out of place, but it was so funny. And then they get into the court, right? And they're standing there. And this is, I guess, whenever you're on trial in a foreign country, you're kind of right there on the freaking stand. You know what I mean? But they're having like a good time. They're just
they don't
laughing.
care.
until he gets the bleeding nose, because he like makes a reference. He kind of sounds like our dad. And then he's "Stop, you're going to make me laugh." And they're totally like going after him. And, Claude Elsinore's on the stand. He's like, "And I would like to point out that the video is time coded and those are very hard to fake." He's like, "Explain time code." He's like, "Just because I doesn't know doesn't mean I'm stupid." He's got the weirdest deal. So finally, Clark gives him bullets. He's like, "Beauty, eh? These will work, Clark." So they stop the bleeding, right? And then he's still laughing, and then he snorts them out, and it shoots the bullets. That happens, and it just goes around the room and knocks the picture of the Queen down, everything like that, and they get sentenced to go to the insane asylum,
right? Back into the clutches of the mad.
Yeah, back in Elsinore Castle or Elsinore Crossings. So yeah, you do get to see the part where Claude is talking to the police officer, the detective, before this, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's paranoid schizophrenia," and he gives this big long definition. He's like, "Sounds like you read that out of a book." He's like, "No, it's a real thing." And
I got a photographic memory.
Yeah, I got a photographic memory. He's like, Bonaparte. He's like, Napoleon, actually.
He's like, "And who chiseled this?" And he's like, I don't know.
I don't really remember. Some sculptor. He's like, "How much did this cost?" And he's like, Yeah. He totally contradicts himself. He's like, "Well, if you got a photographic memory, you'll come handy in this case." So, she's there. She's freaked out, right? Because she knows that they tried to kill her. Big time this time.
Right.
Well, Brewmeister Smith even says that they are paranoid schizophrenic as well, and that's what gets them to be put in his care. So whenever he says that in the trial, the cop looks back at Claude Elsinore, and he's like trying to hide his face,
Right.
Because he knows something's kind of fishy too,
For sure.
So when they get there, that's pretty funny too, because they're locked up in one of those padded cells, and they got their straitjackets on, and they start doing the steamroller. He's like, "Don't cross this line, eh?" And "What line? I don't see no line." And then he's like, "I'm on a steamroller." No steamroller.
Right.
And he's just got it. I mean, it's just funny that they're going through that. Then they come pick him up, and they're taking him. God, taking him for the lobotomy because they're walking through the hallway and they're asking him questions and stuff like that, and they have him hooked up to a lie detector test, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't know what that's for, because they're trying to find out how they got that disc.
Right.
You know?
Well, where it's at, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, "You farted, eh?" And he's like, "No, I didn't." He's like, "Well, he's lying." I didn't need a machine to tell me that, eh? And he's like, "Wait." It's funny. So they get left alone in a room, but after they were walking by, they see Pam, she's laying in the bed. And, of course, Rosie's in the hospital, and what's his nuts? Claude tries to kill him at that point. So he has like a syringe full of brown liquid, and then the dude in the bed next to Rosie goes into cardiac arrest or some shit like that, and he shoots him with that, and he fucking dies, right?
Right.
He's like, "You're not a doctor." So he runs out, and he gets in his car, and the dude at the little bitty checkout window is like, "Hey, you owe me $250." And he's like, "Here, this should be worth $250." So that was kind of a running gag, because Rosie comes out too after he wakes up, and so does Henry Green. They're all right there, right? And they kind of wake up and escape. And Rosie even tells the dude, he takes his jacket off and he's like, $250. He's like, "All I got's 2 5s." So Rosie LaRose ends up showing up while they're doing their own shock therapy on each other. It's like, turn it up to 8 this time, and they're loving that shit. So he walks in, and what's his name, Ted, is having a phone call with probably Brewmeister Smith or something like that, telling him that they escaped, and then Rosie like hip checks him and knocks him out, right?
Right.
But it's funny, he's like, "Hey Rosie, how you doing?" And he's like, but Bob's like, "Shh," and he's like, "Oh, I'm doing pretty good, eh?" So he's trying to keep up the farce, right, before he does a hip check. So they escape, they go grab Pam, and then that's where he's like, "Hey, let's go. There's a tunnel that leads to the brewery underneath here." And he's like, "Oh, that's convenient."
Yes.
So they end up going, all the way over to the brewery, and then they have to split up, right?
As you do.
Bob goes with Rosie and Doug goes with Pam, right?
Yes.
So I gotta scratch on my back. I gotta get it. Oh yeah. So of course they get caught. Rosie and Home Dude, Bob, they don't get caught, but Pam and Home Dude get busted. So they end up in a vat of beer.
Yes.
Like a really huge vat of beer. And, of course, Brewmeister Smith's like, "Ha ha ha, nobody will find you. I'll come collect you after you're dead, and he explains this whole big old plot, how he's going to take over Oktoberfest and then take over the world with his laced beer,
right?
The mind control beer.
Because
Rosie kind of tells him what the deal is. Yeah, Rosie tells him tells both of them what the deal is. So he's like, "Oh yeah, the beer's got some sort of chemical that makes you do things. I haven't been taking it for months or some shit like that, right?
Right.
I just been playing along." And so, they're in the vat, and of course, Rosie ends up in that room downstairs with Brewmeister Smith, and they get into this epic battle, right? And even Max von Sydow is so awesome. Like, he picks up a piece of the pipe that's on the handrail. He rips it out of the freaking ground and off the other pipe, and they start getting into this weird sword fight until Rosie knocks him over the dill and then pushes him into those lights. But Claude Elsinore at that time is he's still in the electricity, because he's tipped them off, because earlier in the movie, Pam and Henry Green, before they got tranquilized, they saw the tape, the real unedited tape of basically Claude staging his death and how he really died with Brewmeister Smith choking him. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they kind of know that all that shit's going on. And Rosie, after he kills him, because he helps Mr. Elsinore, the big guy, helps him kill fucking Brewmeister Smith, come through the electricity to shock him and shit, right?
Right.
So Angus McInnes looks at the screen, and they kind of focus in on the vat that they're in, and it's just showing Claude or the Mr. Elsinore's eyes, you know what I mean?
Right.
And they're just kind of like it's doing that slow like lead into it, like he's staring like go. So he ends up going over there. Him and Dave Thomas show up, and he's like, "Hey, stand back! This is really gonna blow." But the thing is that doesn't open outwards,
right?
So how the fuck is that supposed to explode out? It wouldn't have,
Right.
So they have to give that illusion because it's an inside door, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To keep everything in. So she's like, "I can't believe it. He drank all of it." Now, the funny part about it is while they're in the cold beer, she's like, "That's weird. It feels like it's getting warmer in here." He's like, "Huh, I didn't notice anything." So Home Dude drinks his own pee to get out of there, right?
Yeah.
He drinks all the beer, and the whole thing to where it's completely dry. But it's so funny looking too, because he's like, "Stand back, I gotta burp." And he's like, "Stand back." He's gonna burp, and then he blows the freaking thing open because it was gonna take like I don't know what to get him out of there, right?
Right.
So he's like, "Hey, somebody help me! I gotta throw a leak." But then, like, right, because at that same time, or kind of around there, the insane asylum gets exploded because Claude Elsinore not Claude, but the other Elsinore, goes through the electrical lines to the other side and just explodes the place, right?
Yeah, her father.
Yeah, our father kind of does that after, because they go into the deal, her and Henry Green, and he pops out and he throws the stuff, stop Brewmeister Smith, blah, blah, blah.
Right,
so
right.
He goes through it and he explodes the place. And they're like, "Oh, the Institute caught on fire." It's like, "Hey, I got an idea." So he brings Doug over there. I don't know how they got him out of the building.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's
for
no
sure.
way. He's like, "Can you hold it just a little bit longer?" He's like, "I don't know." But that's the funny part too, because the fireman comes up to him and he's like, "Hey, what took you 2 minutes would have taken us 2 hours." So he's like, "If you ever need a job, just come see me."
Right.
So of course Rosie's all dapper Dan'd up. You know what I mean? He's got he's got a rose in his jacket. Pam's all looking nice and shit like that too. And like 2 minutes, no joke.
Yeah.
I guess because she lives so close. And she went and took a bath in 2 minutes, and then they got out. Well, they know they have to go to Oktoberfest. So, of course, they show the Oktoberfest where, like, the dude's like, "This year we would like to thank Elsinore Brewery for the beer, and all the beer is free." So they're having their big, big deal. And they're standing outside of the deal after he congratulates him for peeing out the fire. He's like, "Hey, I got an idea. Just put these clothes on. We got to go to our house." So they go to their house, right? And of course, they grab Hosehead because Hosehead, at one point, they go to the McKenzie's house. The detective does, which is pretty funny. And Hosehead throws the floppy disk down to him, and then like danger rolls all the way back up to the other side of the house. It was everything they did with it was in reverse, which was funny.
Right.
So they grab Hosehead and they're like, "Hey, give me a map." He's like, "Hey, pay attention. You go here and you got to stop them. You can have all the free beer and sausages you want." And so Hosehead like freaking dashes off, takes off, right? And he jumps into the air, and this is where, of course, it gets absurd. And
This is where it gets absurd?
It's absurd, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so the dog starts flying like Superman. Because
Right.
there's free beer and free sausages. And the dog's like a super dog at that point. And it's funny, too, that the cape falls off right in the middle of it, and the dog just kind of looks back like, "What?" So they end up, because they weren't going to make it in time for all those people for some reason.
Right.
So Jose gets there, gets everybody out. They're like, "There's a big ass skunk in there," and he's like, "Don't worry, that's a Toronto skunk, my jurisdiction." And they go in, and of course, they get to the, "Oh yeah, Rosie's gonna take care of me. Everything's gonna be good. We're all together." They're like, "Okay." He's like, "What are you gonna do with all this beer? It's all contaminated, right?" And it's like, He's like, "You can have it, or you can drive it back." And he's like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "What are you, crazy? This is a 10-speed." And he's like, "How hard can it be? It's a 5-speed times 2." He drives over the curb, of course, and that's the end. That is the end of one of the funniest movies. It's just the gags, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of good chemistry between those two for sure.
Well, they do cut during the credits, and they're like, "See, thanks for sticking around. You got to see all the cool stuff, while everybody that left,
right,
didn't get to see all this." So it was the movie within a movie within a movie, or some shit like that, right?
Yeah, like some fourth wall breaking stuff.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, I never knew what a gaffer was." He's like, "Hey, what's a gaffer?" He's like, that guy ate a lot of the craft services. So basically, it was what they did at the end of the SCTV shows, and even at the end, they're kind of joking around. He's like, "Is that 2 minutes?"
Right.
I mean, this movie still. I mean, after listening to their album with Geddy Lee on it, with the Canadian song and all of their little gags on that, it was just very Cheech and Chongish, but it was for beer.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
More cultural appropriation type stuff,
Yeah, 100%.
But it still, to this day, is one of the funniest freaking movies of all time.
Yeah, I'm not sad I watched it again. It was funny. I laughed. It's just funny. Well, I think it's like, I don't know. I feel like it would be not okay if I made that movie, but it's okay because they're from Canada.
Right. How can you do that?
I mean, it's okay because we made Dude, Where's That Car? That was pretty much every American I knew at the time. So.
Well, what's funny too, because they had a in 1999 they were doing a part 2 called Homebrew, right?
I saw something about that. Yeah.
Yeah, financing fell through, and it was supposed to be directed by some dude named Paul Flaherty.
Okay.
And Dan Aykroyd was on board to play the part of Rick Ripple or something.
Nice.
It's supposed to start on July 19th, 1999 in Toronto, but even at one point, Todd McFarlane was to step in as executive producer to revive the financing of the film.
Really?
So that's crazy. Yeah, do they even have Bob and Doug McKenzie figures?
Probably. I could see that.
They have to.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I think this is definitely like a little. It's not as popular as you would think, but it's like cult classic-y, I think. You know what I mean? It's drop culture.
Oh, 100%. 100%. They have done so much. I don't know. It's one of those things that keeps going. And I think for years and years and years and years to come, they'll always be funny in some way, just because of the way that they did everything. They do have toys, by the way. They are made by McFarlane Toys, too.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Man, they go for quite a bit, too. Up to like for $100.
Yeah. He's got some really detailed collectible toys out there for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a funny movie. It'll always be funny, and everybody's always gonna love it.
Absolutely.
If you're really, really into it, yeah, it's gonna be one of those movies you're like, dang.
Well, now it will be because we've shared it with everybody.
Grandkids.
I'm glad that we could help it. I said now it will be because we shared it with everybody. That's our job.
I honestly, I bet you anybody that has ever listened to us has seen this movie at least once.
Well, I don't know that that's true. I think we have some younger demographic at times than you think, my friend.
You don't think so? I think they have. I think a lot of people have.
Well, I think a lot of people have, but I'd say it's definitely not guaranteed that it's all of them. You know.
Ooh, right now the eBay's got it set for $45. It's a pretty good deal.
What? The toys?
in the box, Bob and Doug McKenzie. And of course, they got their little theme song. Yeah, I would 100% have these sitting in my office right now. If they were in, they would be opened. I don't care. But yeah, no, it's hard to do a comedy movie, I think, because you just want to just talk about all the funny stuff instead of going linear style through the movie.
Right, absolutely.
Wayne's World's the same way. There's just so many gags that you notice. Cable Guy is a little bit different because with the Cable Guy, it did have a pretty broad or a pretty well-defined story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unlike this, which was, it was based on Hamlet, but at the same time, you just wanted to see Bob and Doug the whole time. No matter what.
Just bumbling around. Drinking beers.
Yeah. All right, you push me around. When he tells Rosie, he's like, oh, so you had a nervous breakdown? And he's like, yeah, me too, when he was born.
Right.
And then when Dave Thomas, whenever they push Pam out of the way, and he's like, do you see the way she looked at me? He's like, yeah, she thought you were a freak. It was freaking hilarious the way he laughed. It was so funny.
Yeah, it's like that laugh, awkward humor like for sure, and I love it. It was good for sure.
Yeah, I think if I could find me a toque like the Canada one, I'd probably have a toque like that.
There you go.
They had like a whole like jargon, like on the back of their album.
Mm-hmm.
They have everything described: their jackets, their hats, the earmuffs, everything like that. It's hilarious.
Nice.
Yeah, I've had it for a couple of years now. Dang.
That's pretty awesome.
Well,
so I think we would both recommend this movie. What else, Brock? Anything else?
No. If you haven't watched it, watch it.
Absolutely.
It is hilarious. Everything is funny. It is still funny to this day, and it's like I said before, it's going to be funny forever, just because it's stupid.
It's funnier when you're on weed.
Yeah, it's even better when you're high. It really is. The first couple of times I watched it, I was stoned as shit.
Right? Sure. I don't know if that's true. I think I saw it like when I was kind of young. So I don't. Yeah. I don't know if that was fact for me back then, but not that I didn't see it after that when I was. As you should. I might have been.
Yeah, I was probably 13 or something like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Junior high, at least. Yeah. Well, no, that's about it for Strange Brew. Where can they send us a line if they like it? All of our friends of the show out there.
Yeah, you can check us out on dropculture.com. You could send us an email if you'd like at dropculturepodcast@gmail.com. If you're real into the social media, you can hit us up on @dropculture at @dropculture podcast, correct? At
yes.
Facebook and Instagram, and @dropculture on Twitter. And we'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you would love to take a few seconds out of your time and just hit that subscribe button, maybe a like button. If you want to get real fancy, throw a review up there. We do have a tendency to sometimes read those out on the podcast. So I think with that, I've been Dan.
And I am the big ragu, Brock.
The big ragu. Hey.